Welcome back, Fragrance Fiend here today with yet another city exclusive by Labo. I've got a really special one today from Moscow, Russia. It is Benjoin 19, obviously translated from Benjoin. As I've loved the past few, I thought I'd do a tiny bit more research into the entire city exclusive lineup to see what else they have to offer, and I thought I'm gonna order the most obscure one out of the lot. And I don't know why a Labo boutique in Moscow is quite obscure to me, but I thought, you know, that might not be around forever, so let's order a sample of it while it lasts. And after reading this note breakdown, I had to get my nose on it. It consists of olibanum, amber, cedarwood, and musks, and obviously benzoin. So yeah, they don't really give too much away on this one. And the perfumer behind this one is none other than Frank Vogel, the same guy behind Santal 33, Musk 25, Noir 29, and Tobacco 28. And I absolutely love all his work, and this is a complete first impression, never having smelt this one before. Let's crack it open. Got your invoice, and the sample actually comes in a little cigar-like thing like this. And this little 1.5ml sample costs 19 Australian dollars. Cannot wait to get my nose on this one, so let's go for it. I have to say, that is probably the best Labo I've smelt, judging from a very first impression. I'm actually blown away. This actually tiny bit smells like Creed Centaurus, but without the smokiness. It's a lot more smoother. But it's got a very familiar DNA. I could not get my nose off this one. I actually think this one, just out of nowhere, has jumped into my top 5, or if not top 3 Labos of all time. So I've mentioned this a million times before, but the name of the actual Labo will always take a tiny bit of a backseat sometimes, while the other notes in the fragrance overtake it a little bit more, but this is not the case. You actually do get a ton of benzoin and a ton of olibanum. It's very resinous. It's almost as if Labdinum 18 and Tonka 25 were blended or had a sibling or something like that. It smells like a tiny bit of a blend, but without the poweriness and without that harsh opening you often find in Tonka 25. It's definitely on the sweeter side. You could actually describe this one as intoxicating, but without being too overly sweet. I definitely feel like this one's going to be a tiny bit more of a linear fragrance. I don't think it will develop as much, not that that's necessarily a bad thing, because it's got a really incredible DNA behind this one. I think this fragrance in particular is going to be a tiny bit more linear. I'm just judging that from the opening, but yeah, those resins and the amber are definitely overtaking that opening. Get a tiny bit of that cedarwood in there as well to add a bit more of a creamier texture. And I'm sure, like most of the Labos, you'll get a tiny bit of that musk as it begins to fade out, whenever that may be, but you'll find that out at the end of the video. I think this really hit the nail on the head with my expectations. It's a dark fragrance. It's a little more mature, but by that I mean probably like mid to late 20s to 30s or above, even though I feel this type of DNA, teenagers will probably love it as well. I mean, if you like your Le Male Elixir or your honeyed tobacco fragrances, or a lot of what's very popular in the industry at the moment, I think you'll love this, which is kind of funny because Labo like to do what's not popular, and this one was actually released in 2013, so I think the industry's finally caught up to them, and as usual, Labo are always ahead of the trends. I feel like this one may be the least appreciated or the least known. I mean, you go to Labo's website, it's the one at the very bottom of the page. Even though it's been in the lineup for a very long time, you don't hear too many people talking about it, which is a bit of a surprise because this is honestly one of my favorite Labos I've smelt. So I just looked up the note breakdown of Creed Centaurus. Obviously, benzoin is in the base, that's why I made that comparison. And you could say there's a tiny bit of a crossover with the amber, tonka, and vanilla, but this definitely doesn't have the same level of smokiness as Centaurus. So if anything, I think this one might be a little more approachable to potentially newcomers into the world of fragrance, or people that like something a little more wearable all year round, even though I'd probably classify this one as a tiny bit more of a winter scent. I guess you could say almost the dry down of Centaurus is like the opening of this one. And just gonna call it now, but I prefer the Benjoin 19. Now I can definitely smell their signature musks slowly creeping into that transformation. So while I wait for the dry down of this one, I'm gonna read you the inspiration behind the creation of this scent. And the description is as follows. Benjoin 19, our Moscow exclusive, is about a moment depicted by one of the most important writers of all time, Leo Tolstoy. In the eternal Anna Karenina, when Anna meets Count Vronsky in a Moscow train station, Benjoin 19 is that moment, the moment when everything changes, when your life topples over, when nothing will ever be the same. In Tolstoy's masterpiece, this happens in Moscow. Yet what makes Karenina a work of art is its universality. It could have happened anywhere. This is what Benjoin 19 is, a universal tribute to passionate spirits, to those determined to live their lives on their own terms. Like the novel, Benjoin 19 is a mosaic of intertwined stories centered on benjoin, olibanum, amber, cedar, and musks that transmits a deep and powerful experience of sensuality and rebelliousness. And yes, like its printed counterpart, 928 pages in its original version, Benjoin 19 is incredibly long-lasting. I also found the brand very transparent with their longevity. I think it was Team Marcher where they mentioned it was a very minimalistic skin scent, but it was anything anything but that. It was actually quite a powerful, long-lasting, a very radiant scent. So now that a few minutes have passed, the projection of this one is definitely above average. The notes are beginning to blend together a tiny bit. You could really cut it in half and dissect all the notes before, but now it's just a beautiful blend of that benzoin and olibanum with everything else just giving it that extra edge. So I'm finding now the notes are beginning to blend together a tiny bit more. Before you could almost cut each one in half and dissect the benzoin olibanum, and now it's really those two combined together with the rest of the notes just binding it into a very warm, cozy, resinous, intoxicating but not over the top, almost boozy scent. So now the scary part, the price, because I really want to get my hands on this, probably out of all the other Labos at the moment. So in Australia it costs $225 for 15ml, $570 for 50ml, and $810 for 100ml. And I hate to make the comparison, but for 50ml of Benjoin 19, you can get 100ml of Centaurus for the same price, or $9 more if you want to be that specific. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if Frank Vocal was the secret perfumer behind Centaurus. As per usual, this one is only available throughout the month of September unless you want to take a little trip to Russia. This one is not available in any stores in Australia, maybe the Labo boutiques, which are across the other side of my country. So otherwise, order a sample, get your nose on it. I highly recommend trying this one if you do like, well, pretty much everything I've already described. So I'll be sure to keep you updated because I'm very tempted to grab this one. If you like today's video, I've got a ton more on the way, so be sure to subscribe. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.